Hello, hello. I am excited to be here today. Today, I have Kelly Kingsland with me. She is a transformative feminine energetics mentor, Reiki master and teacher, ordained metaphysical minister, and international best-selling author. With a foundation in psychology and a lifelong dedication to learning, Kelly blends her diverse skills to offer a truly unique approach to personal and professional empowerment. Kelly, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here.
No, thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm looking forward to this.
Nice. So tell our listeners what is a feminine energetics mentor and an ordained metaphysical minister? I'm hoping most of the people listening at least know what a Reiki master, or at least Reiki, right? Although, I've been Reiki attuned for, I don't know, 14 years, and I just assume everyone knows what it is, but I have come across people that don't. So why don't
Yeah,
you just share with people who you are, what your journey is, how you got here, all the fun things.
sure. So it actually all started with Reiki. I think everybody's
It
journey
always does.
starts
They
with
call it the
Reiki.
gateway drug, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Can I share, before you even go, I want to share with you, my mom passed. She'll be gone actually 34 years tomorrow. Tomorrow, whatever the date. Yeah, tomorrow. And when she was sick for a very short period of time. So we're talking like 1990 to early 91. I'm in Massachusetts, so on the East Coast. So she used to go to a guy, and for the people listening and not watching, I'm air quoting, a guy in New Hampshire. And every time she went to this guy, she felt better. Well, it wasn't until I was going through my Reiki training, I was like, son of a bitch, my mother was having energy work done, whether it was Reiki or something else, but she was going to some guy that was doing energy work back in the 90s when nobody really knew what Reiki was or was talking about it as openly.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It's completely side topic. It's amazing the number of hospitals and medical centers now in the US that offer
Yes.
Reiki as an alternative treatment and
Yeah.
as a complementary treatment to what they're doing,
Yeah. Even
specifically with cancer
acupuncture.
patients.
Yeah, the one of the hospital that I'm affiliated with, they do Reiki there as well as acupuncture, which it's nice to see that acupuncture I think goes between the two, but it really is more of a holistic, out of pocket, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, it's nice to start seeing that blend of Eastern and Western.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So go ahead,
Um,
tell us about yourself.
so yeah, I started my journey with Reiki back in 2011 and really got into the energetics and crystals and all that good stuff. I wanted to learn more about metaphysics. So I did a course to become a metaphysical minister, and I'm in Canada, in Ontario. Very different here than it is in the US, right? I just take what I know from TV, but
Yeah.
according to TV, you can just go online and become ordained, like pay the fee and you're done.
Yeah.
Whereas here, it's a very lengthy process.
Okay.
And so I did the course, wrote the exams, received my ordination, then had to join a governing body, which is actually based out in BC,
Okay.
and then apply to the government of Ontario for the ability to do weddings and such. And in order to do that, you have to have a police check, you have to have personal
Wow.
references, you have to,
Yeah.
like all different things, very in depth, takes months and months and months. So August of 2018, I actually achieved that. And then
Congratulations, because it didn't sound. You explain to people what metaphysical even means. For those that are listening, that maybe that's a little wooey word that they don't really understand, share a little bit of what that means.
sure. So metaphysical is very much based on energy, on the universe, on the way everything is interconnected. Um, Alternative therapies, right? Like I use crystals when I'm doing Reiki to kind of boost the energy on the different chakras. Um, it just I like to say it encompasses a lot of the woo.
Right. Yeah.
It is, it's very high level when you say metaphysics.
Yeah.
It encompasses so many different things that you see out
It's almost
there.
like it's the things you can't really explain.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, everything from hands-on healing to mediumship to astrology and to be a metaphysical minister, actually, I didn't know this until I did it. All different faiths can actually be metaphysical ministers.
Which makes sense, right? Because there's a difference between religion. I think of metaphysical as also spirituality, right? And
Exactly.
spirituality and religion are so different. I mean, there's a crossover, but they are separate,
They are.
right?
They
Like, I
are,
don't
but
consider myself religious, but very spiritual.
exactly, exactly. And it's amazing to see the variety of people. I know some people who do it who are very God-based. I know other people who are metaphysical ministers who are Wiccan and everything in between. So it's also a very accepting and all-encompassing um, way to live, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Um, Metaphysical ministers will do everything from hand fastings and baby namings to traditional marriages and same-sex marriages, and everybody's allowed to love everybody, and everything is energy, and we're all interconnected.
What's the funnest thing you've done as a metaphysical minister?
Oh, it's got to be the weddings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because I mean, you still have to have a certain basis in the ceremony itself that represents the metaphysical,
Hmm.
but they can have so much fun. I did one wedding that was Lord of the Rings.
Oh my gosh.
I did another wedding where the groom wore a crown and the bride and all the bridesmaid had elven ears. Like I had another one I didn't end up doing, but I was talking to the bride and groom. It was Harry Potter themed. I actually did a hand fasting once, and the bride and groom were fans of Harry Potter, so I changed the hand fasting wording to reflect the unbreakable vow from Harry Potter.
I love that.
Right? Like you can have so much fun.
Yeah, that's super fun. That's really
Yeah.
fun. The first time I was introduced to energy work, so my background is I was in a corporate setting, right? Very logical, left brain, like, all right, you need something done. I'm the person who will get it done for you. And this was probably 15 or 16 years ago. And I was seeing a therapist who used Donna Eden energy. I don't know if you're familiar with Donna Eden energy work. So,
No.
Donna Eden energy work. And I was laying on her table and I thought, well, this is very awkward. Why is this woman rubbing my belly? And I opened my eyes and she wasn't touching me. And I was like, okay, that shit's cool. I need to know more about it. But even before that, I was in my 20s, maybe 30s. And so I'm in Massachusetts, right? I'm in New England. I'm like 30 minutes from Salem. And I was in
Oh,
Salem.
fun.
Yeah. I was in Salem with some friends and I picked up a crystal and I had what I would call a religious experience and didn't know what was happening. And I didn't have community.
Mhm.
So I was on like a solo curiosity journey for like another 20 years until I was in my 40s. And I bought like, you mentioned Wiccan, but I bought like Wicca for the soul practitioner, right? Like whatever I could like find. But it wasn't until I found community and I was in this women's group and they were coaches and healers and psychics. And my Reiki master teacher was in that group.
Mhm.
And that's when I started. I took the Reiki classes, then I went to coaching school, then I went to an energy healing school, and then from there it just opens it all up. So was there an opening it all up for you, or have you always just been open and curious?
I've always been open and curious. Mind you, 30 years ago, it really wasn't as well known as it
Right,
is now.
right.
I was always intuitive. I've always been an empath. So that is something that, pretty much born with. The actual journey itself, though, started. So if you're in Massachusetts, have you been to New York to Lilydale?
I have not.
Okay, so it's only like an hour, 45-minute drive from me. So I try to go
Okay.
every year. And I had gone back in 2011 for an intensive weekend course called Spiritual Insight Training.
Okay.
And it's a combination of mediumship, energy work, and meditation. And
Hmm.
that was my introduction to energy work. And of course, spiritual energy work is a little bit different, just in the methods, right? All energy work is pretty much the same. It's just a matter of how it's done. And I was doing a energy healing on a gentleman who was, this we were students were working on each other. And he asked me if I did Reiki. And I said no, like I wasn't even familiar with it. And he said, well, I'm a Reiki master. He said, if you don't do it, you should be, because the
Okay.
vibration's different, right?
Yeah.
So I came home and didn't really think anything more of it. And a few months later, I went online, went onto Google, searched, Reiki classes in my city. And I clicked on a link, and this picture came up, and it was a very, lovely looking woman, very kind looking face. And I scrolled down and saw that she offered the classes. And then I kept scrolling. And it turns out that she lives across the street from me.
Oh my God, I love that.
And I've been here at the time, I think we were here maybe 18 years. I can see her house from my front door, and
Oh
I
my
had
gosh.
never met her. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, universe, got
Good
it.
sign. Yep. Okay,
Like,
I'll pay
other than
attention.
whack over the head, what
Right.
more do I need?
Right.
And I actually phoned her and I said, you're not going to believe this, but do you live at the intersection of this street and this street? She's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, I'm right across the street from you. I'm waving. Can you see me?
Oh my
And
God, I
that
love
began the
that.
journey.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did my Reiki. I actually want to get attuned to get like in a different by a different teacher just because I feel like when I got attuned the first time, I was still so in my head. Like it
Mm,
would, I think it would just be such a different experience. Like I've gotten attuned to other healing modalities and I feel it so much differently than I probably was. I'm sure with Reiki, I was like, what is she doing? Why is her hand here? What she said? Like I
yeah.
was still in my head a lot. But when I went to healing, so my I went to the Reese Thomas Institute, which it's virtual now, but it was online, and I taught at the school for 4 years. But my Reiki teacher used to teach at the school, and when I told her I was going to coaching school, she's like, "You've got to come to the Reese Thomas. You've got to come." And I was like, "No, no, I really want to go do this coaching thing." So I did coaching school, and a couple of years later, I was at a retreat that Lisa, my Reiki teacher, was speaking at. And I was out to dinner with a group of friends. And I said, do any of you know Lisa? Have you ever met with her? And one of my friends said, yeah, I did. As a matter of fact, I signed up for the Reese Thomas Institute. And everyone said my face dropped. Like, I really want to do that. And she was like, do it. I'm like, I can't. I do not have the money to be investing in that right now. I can't. It's a 3-year program, right? I mean, you can do each year individually, but I knew if I was doing it, I was all in. So she's like, come on, come on. And by the end of the weekend, I came home to my husband. And I was like, "So we need to find $5,000 because I'm doing this program." And then he ended up doing it the following year. So we both went through it. But my friend never finished. She did year one, and will often talk about her purpose was to just get me there.
Okay.
Right. So she was like, I'm just, she needed to finish, I think it was a great program and everyone should do the 3 years because each year is so different. But she was like, my job was to just get you there. I was like, absolutely. Because it was out in the peripheral. Like it wasn't in my face that
Yeah.
somebody was doing it. So I love when those things are like, pay attention.
Yeah. They're not very subtle sometimes.
No, no. So I want to talk about. I know you do a lot of work with the balance of masculine and feminine energy. See, I can't even say the word. It's the work I need to do, and I can't even say the word. Masculine and feminine energies. So let's dig into that a little bit because that's as somebody who has lived, I'm going to be 60 in a month and a day. So for 60 years, I've lived in my masculine, and some of the work I've done over the last few years is trying to embrace that feminine more. But how do you help your clients embrace that more? Because it's not easy.
It's not. It's not. I tend to take a holistic approach. My degree's in psychology, and I did work in mental health when I first got out of school. So I blend the practical and the woo-woo, right?
Okay.
Um, so while we are working on learning about feminine energetics, excuse me, seeing how it feels, learning to tell the difference, I also do the chakras.
Okay.
So the basis of energetics has to be there in order for the feminine to be able to be identified and to be able to pull it out.
When you
So
say the basis, what does that mean?
the knowledge of the chakras,
Oh,
the
okay. Okay.
clearing of the
Sure.
energy, how does
Yeah.
it feel? How do you know when your throat's blocked? How do you know when your sacral's blocked? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And how do you fix it? But feminine energy is very much intrinsic in all of us. It's not something that you need to learn. You just need to learn how to release it,
Right.
right? And I'm like you, corporate all the way through.
Right.
And I mean, like I said, I did mental health out of school in my early 20s, and then started getting into more corporate, actually law. And it's very masculine based. You know
Right.
that, it's all about who can work the most, who can produce the most, doing stuff on your own, um, just pushing and pushing and hustling. And as women, it's extra difficult because we're also trying to balance everything else,
Right.
right? So the children, if you have them, the spouse or partner, if you have them, the house, the parents. Specifically, I found now that I'm in my mid 50s, I have aging parents and I also have kids in their 20s,
Right.
right? So balancing that.
Yeah.
And we seem to think that we're supposed to be able to do it all.
Well, do you remember the bring home? I mean, we had this ad back in probably the 70s or 80s, I can bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan and never,
Yeah,
never, what, right? Like, I mean, it was told to us that you can do it all.
yeah, yeah.
And and I think too, I think that's true, that culture, but I think there's also, for me, I think part of it is I call myself a control freak in recovery, right?
Hmm.
Because there was some wounding. Um, when I've done some inner child work, my 15-year-old had like, I go back and I play with my 3-year-old and she's adorable, but my 15-year-old is like, back the fuck up, right? Like I need to take care of me, right? So for me, I also think there's a survival mode. Not that I mean, in one weekend when I was 15, my grandmother lived with us and she tried to commit suicide, and my parents told us they were getting divorced. Now, I will tell you as an adult, my parents had an amazing divorce and my grandmother survived. But that 15-year-old, nobody checked in on her.
Yeah, yeah.
And she's like, I will never be unprepared again. So I've got the list, right? And I mean,
Hmm.
I'm much chiller now, but it's still in there, right? I've got to make sure all, right?
Yeah,
But easing into that just surrender and that just being, and it's something I teach my clients, not to the level that you do, but I teach them how to break the addiction to busyness because we have
yeah,
to start there,
exactly.
right? But it really is. It's survive. I think it's survival, right?
Yeah,
The masculine, who goes to, who fights the battles? The masculine, right? So
exactly.
it's survival. So how do you help your clients shift that?
Yeah. So going back to what you had mentioned about the 15-year-old,
Yeah,
the majority of our need to control comes from a place of trauma,
of course. Yeah, 100%.
right? And as I'm sure you're aware, that 15-year-old is going to be anchored somewhere in your energy
Oh, yeah.
and it needs to be released.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at the feminine and the masculine, both are natural, right? And you have to have both. You do. And I am 100% a feminist. But that being said, men and women are different.
100%.
you know, we are just as smart, we are just as, but we have certain strengths. They have certain strengths. The issue comes when we try to use their strengths to make
Mm,
us move forward. It doesn't always work.
yeah.
And the statistics around burnout in corporate women are like 10, 11% more likely to burn out than men
Why do you think that is?
because they're not acting from a place of centeredness. They're trying to
Mm.
be something they're not, and they're trying to do that while doing everything else in the background.
I would say, I was in corporate for many years, and the women I worked for and the men I worked for, I would choose the men managers over the women any day of the week.
Absolutely.
And it's because I was a great leader. Like I was
Mhm.
a leader, and I know that I wasn't that. I think I learned from that. Like I wasn't cutthroat. Like I wasn't going to yell at you, scream at you, have an attitude with you, and I wasn't going to step on you to get higher.
Mhm.
And the women that I worked with, the four, that was the energy of them. I mean, I had
Yeah,
one boss, you didn't know what kind of mood she was in. So you walked in and everyone looked at each other and was like thumbs up or thumbs down, whether or not you could approach her.
right. And how
Right.
toxic is that to have to deal with
Yeah.
every day?
Right. I even had one boss, and she shared with me like it was hard being the only female at the executive level that she was at. And she had very masculine energy,
Mhm.
and it was kill or be killed.
Yeah,
That's just not, that was never a place where I wanted to come from. But I could get shit done, but I wouldn't do it at the expense of anyone else.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's how you have to look at it, right? You're going to anchor into the feminine and you're going to use the strengths that you were born with. So, when we're working from our feminine, we're working as a team, right? We're using our intuition. You still have to use your masculine. You can't not, because the
Right.
masculine is what gets things done,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Like, as much as I would love to just be laying there having someone feed me grapes all day, it's not going to happen. But it's a matter of, working with someone else to get things done. And with the masculine, they tend to be very independent, very cutthroat. Like, look at me, this is what I'm achieving. Whereas feminine is more along the lines of, this is what we can accomplish together,
Yeah.
right? And using your intuition, I'm sure, you're like me, you're very in touch with your intuition. When I meet someone, I know instantly if I'm going to like this person or not.
Right.
And it's not because of how they look or what they say, it's the energy that they're
Yeah.
putting off. So when you can use that, you know that, Jeff over here will screw you over as soon as look at you. Whereas Mike over here would be happy to see you succeed.
Right.
And then you can determine who it is that you want to work with and who it is that you can trust. And I find what I prefer all my life. I was in corporate after I finished working in mental health, and I always said I would rather work with men than women.
Yeah.
And
Right.
women can just be mean.
Yeah.
They can be nasty, they can be cutthroat, they can stab you in the back. Men tend not to have that reaction to people, partly because they're more sure of themselves. They're not trying to prove themselves as hard. But because we're trying to work in a state that we aren't naturally supposed to be in, it brings on the negative effects as well.
Yeah. For some reason, this memory just popped into my head. I worked with a great group of leaders. We had a great manager, and the team was great. And after the manager left, the team started to leave, and I was one of the last people left. And one of the managers got replaced with somebody who we used to call him the sergeant, like he had to have been in the service, very
Mm.
militant, and he would talk to you like you worked for him. We were equals. And I had been at the company for 6 years longer than he had, right? And we were working on a project together and he kind of left it for me to do. And I walked into his office and I'd never, and I'm always the like, let's make everyone happy and people please. I walked in, I was like, slammed it on his desk. I was like, I do not work for you. This is not my job. This is yours. And he looked at me. He had no idea what I was talking about because he was so just matter of fact and doing his thing. I was like, you just wanted me to do your job. He's like, oh, yeah, no, I didn't. And then I felt bad for showing up that way, but this had been building,
Yeah.
right? But it was just our energies, right? My interpretation of it, we had two completely different interpretations of the same situation.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I felt bad because I was in this like kill or be killed like feeling, which isn't my norm. And I was like, okay, I feel bad. I just made it, not that I made an ass out of myself, but like I stood a ground, which I'm not used to.
Yeah.
And that felt, yeah. But that's the energy that feels icky when people are always doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? One of the best things, even though you may have not necessarily approached it in the right way, one of the best things women can do as business owners and as corporate are to set boundaries and to
100.
ensure those boundaries are adhered to.
Yeah.
Like I know I had people I worked with, and one gentleman in specific, I had spent, well, I still do some law, and it's been 27 years. And I had this young guy who happened to be related to a lawyer try and tell me things and that I wasn't doing it properly. And I was like, really?
Then go hire
Really?
someone else.
You're young enough to be my son,
Right.
and I've been doing this longer than you've been alive.
Oh my gosh.
So, you know, and at that point, it's a matter of saying, okay, you know what? I appreciate your input, but I don't need it. I know what I'm doing. Thank you so much. Go on your way.
Right.
Right. And women need to learn how to put those boundaries in place with their male coworkers, specifically if they are trying to approach things from a more feminine standpoint.
Yeah. I
Right.
think boundaries are, I have always struggled with boundaries with my time. I'm getting much better at it. Because one of my top values is connection. So I always love
Mhm.
to connect with people. So like, yes, you want to have dinner with me? Yes, you want to get on a call with me? Yes, you want to do that. And then I look at my calendar and I'm like, when am I going to get some work done?
Yes.
So I'm getting better at that. But I remember the first time I set a boundary. It was probably 10 years ago when I was first starting to set boundaries. I'm also a hairdresser. And my sister's husband at the time, he's now her ex-husband, reached out to me on a Sunday. And my husband was going to be away for the day. And I wanted to just like have me time. I don't know that I had anything specifically scheduled, but I wanted just me time. And my brother-in-law reached out and said, hey, can I get a haircut? Now, it probably would have taken me 15 minutes. So I said, hey, not today. I've got plans. And then come on, it won't take that long. And I always tell my clients, the person who pushes back on your boundaries is the person you need boundaries for, right?
Yes.
So and I also work with my clients on learning to sit in that uncomfortableness,
Mhm.
right? So I got really uncomfortable because I am a people pleaser and I want to make everyone happy. And I really didn't have anything specific planned. So it wasn't like I had to be somewhere or do something at a certain time. So I had a choice to make in that moment. I could continue to say no and sit in that discomfort, or I could suck it up and say yes and then be pissed at myself after.
Right.
Right. Said no, but I had to sit with that. Well, did you really have to say no? What else are you doing? You're not really doing anything, right? All that story. And boundaries make us feel when we're setting them, they're not comfortable. They're not easy, but they're so important.
Yeah, they are. And as women, I think we feel if we're not doing something, then we're wasting our time, which isn't true.
Not at all.
You need that time. One of the things I show my students and my clients, you have to take time for yourself. even if my favorite thing to do is I grab my book and I go to a restaurant and I take myself out for lunch and I sit by myself and I don't talk to anybody other than the server and I just enjoy the me time.
I
And
love that.
we feel guilty for doing that. And we
Well, I think
shouldn't.
there's, oh, sorry, go ahead, finish that.
No, I just said, and we shouldn't.
Yeah, no, I think there's so much tied up in that. A couple of years ago, I share this story often, but a couple of years ago, I was going to a workshop. I was signed up for a 3-day workshop. For some reason, at the last minute, I chose not to go. So I had 3 days with nothing scheduled. So I woke up on the first day and I started to read a book. And about 30 minutes in, I said, oh, I got to go do something. I got to go to work. And I could feel like that anxiety. And I went, huh, well, that's interesting because you actually have nothing to do. So I'm an EFT practitioner. So I did some tapping on it. And what got to it was that if I'm not doing, I'm not worthy.
Yes.
And so often that the constant need for busyness is tied to self-worth, right? So I continued to tap and then finished reading my whatever the chapter or whatever, right? Like I forced myself to sit in that discomfort of I have to go do something.
Yeah.
Where 10 years ago, even probably 5 years ago, it just wouldn't have even been a second thought. I just would have gotten up and gone to work because that's
Yeah.
what you do. And when I work with my clients around the busyness, it's like I start with give yourself 5 minutes. If you can't find 5 minutes to just sit, we got bigger problems.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they always say that busyness is a way to avoid your emotions and your
Oh,
thoughts,
100%.
right?
And what I say, what I tell my clients, the way I describe it is, you're addicted to food, you're addicted to alcohol, you're addicted to drugs, you're addicted to busyness. The
Mhm.
difference is you're fat, drunk, addict. But when you're addicted to busyness, you get atta girls. Wow, look at that girl go. Look at that woman go. She's getting so much shit done. I look at old Facebook posts of mine from 12, 15 years ago, and it would be like, today was a really productive day. I'm like,
Yeah.
why was that like your badge of honor? But it is because we get accolades for all the shit we get done. Oh my God, I can't believe you got all that done, right? We just finished the holiday season. How many people were running around like a crazy person because they had to get everything done,
Hmm. Oh, I know.
right? We really don't. It's the stories we're telling ourselves. And what could be possible if we could stop these stories?
That's exactly true. Like I see people, I'm the same as you. I look back on my old Facebook stories as well. And there was a time, oh, a while ago, before I kind of started doing all of the feminine energetics, especially.
Yeah.
I was doing energy, but not specifically looking at that. And I was working 3 jobs,
Oh,
and plus
I've
running
always
a
worked two
house.
jobs. I'm right now in my business. I still do hairdressing, but I used to do it every week, one night a week. Now it's maybe once or twice a month. But I'm like, I'm only doing one thing. I don't even know what part of it was I have varied interests,
Mhm.
but yes, same.
Yeah, and it would be like, oh, today's going to be a busy day. I have this and then I would say, I'm doing this from 9 a.m. and I'm working until 9 p.m. and, thank God for coffee. And now I look at it and I'm like, I'm not doing anything after 7 p.m. I'm sorry.
I said to my husband this morning, I got up really early, exceptionally early for me. I am not a morning person, but I had knee replacement surgery in October and I have not set an alarm clock since then. So I'm trying to just listen to my body, right? I could stay up till 2 in the morning. I am
Mhm.
much better at night than I am in the morning. So this morning I got up at 4:30 to do the 4:30 a.m. P, right? It was a little later than normal. And I got back to bed and I couldn't go back to sleep. So at 5 a.m., I was like, okay, why don't you get up? Right. But my brain is like, but it's only 5 a.m. You don't have to get up. But what was lovely is I got up and I spent, I think it was 9:30 before I sat at my desk. So I spent 4.5 hours meditating, reading, doing my PT exercises, having breakfast, putting ice on my knee, right? I was like, I'm high maintenance. 4 hours is a, but it was a beautiful morning of self-care,
Yeah.
right? I have to do all that most mornings, and I can get it usually done in like an hour to 2 hours, right?
Mhm.
But this morning I was like, yeah, as 2025, I'm starting my days later because I do, in 2024, I was like, why aren't I getting all my meditations in? Why aren't I doing this? Well, because I was starting at 9 a.m. and getting up at 7,
Yeah.
like, right?
Yeah.
So
And you need that good hour just to wake up.
right. So, for women listening today who might feel stuck in the hustle and burnout, what's one thing she can do right now to start shifting towards a more balanced way of living and working and maybe ease into her feminine more?
I think the very first thing she should be doing right now is sitting down and honestly, and we aren't very honest with ourselves, and honestly think of what it is that she wants for her future
Mm.
and what she wants now to get there. So, if you're working 60 hours a week right now and you're exhausted, do you still want to be doing that in 10 years? Because if you don't, you need to start now,
Right. It's so
right?
true. It's
And
so true.
discover, what some people are so stuck in what they're doing that they don't realize there's other options.
Well, I think fear holds us back, right? Like the stories we
Absolutely.
tell. I mean, I will even say myself, I've been a coach for 12 years, but only full time for 5. I was laid off from a corporate job in 2019 and still had that story of I need to work in corporate to make the money and blah, 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 blah. And
Mhm.
then, this little thing called COVID happened. I think you might have had it in Canada too.
Totally.
Um, and I tell people I manifested a pandemic and COVID is my fault because in April of 2020 somebody reached out and said, "Are you coaching?" And I was like, "Sure, cuz what the fuck else am I doing besides painting my entire house right now?" Right? So I had to learn, I really had to embrace trust and surrender. And as an
Mhm.
entrepreneur, that's basically the MO, right? Like there is no, guaranteed salary every week and right? So there's a lot of that just okay, I this is where I want to be, so I have to trust and lean into
Mhm.
it feels uncomfortable sometimes but knowing that this is I'm not going back to corporate, this is where I'm meant to be.
Yeah. And I have always found, and it's funny because I know I'll say this, and I know people don't often believe it, but every time I have invested in something for myself, learning wise, so whether I've hired a coach or joined a program or whatever, usually within the first 4 weeks, I've gotten my money back,
Yep.
right?
I
People are so worried
Similar thing
about
just
it.
happened to me. I
Yeah,
just made a really significant investment and like a week later signed 2 new clients. And I was like, I hadn't signed 2 clients like all quarter and signed them, you know what I mean? So I
yeah,
was like, oh, and that was like half of what the program cost, I think. Yeah,
yeah. And that's just the way the universe works.
absolutely.
It is really about surrender and trust.
Yeah,
A lot of people have an issue with that, especially if you're stuck in corporate hustle and,
right.
or you're a business owner and
Yeah,
you're stuck in that. I see so many women who are working in the coaching space, and it seems to be one or the other. Either they are doing 10,001 things, or they're like, I work 3 hours a day. It doesn't seem to be a medium.
right,
Myself, I'm in the middle,
right.
right? I mean, I would love to only work 3 hours a day, but I can't see where that would be
Yeah,
effective. Um, so it's a matter of just, when you put it out there, you're always going to get back what you've put out there.
right,
But the trust is a huge thing. And manifestation, even though the word is overused and misinterpreted and commercialized and whatever, it really does work when you know how to do it.
right.
Like I remember years back, my youngest had gotten a summer job and we needed to get a second car because he had been away at school. So one car was okay between me and my husband. And I went onto Facebook because, everything's on Facebook.
Right.
And I posted on my page and I just said, hey, I'm looking for a used car. This is my budget. I don't care what kind it is. I just need it to be safe because my son's going to be driving it. And, I ideally not have like 1 million kilometers on it.
Right.
Within probably 20 minutes, someone I know messaged me and said, oh, my partner is selling his SUV and it was, $300 less than what my budget was and had like 110,000 kilometers on it.
Wow.
Right. So it works as long as you do it properly and as long as energetically you have the ability to receive.
Yeah.
Right. It's not going to work if you're, oh, I really want this. I really want that.
And it's from scarcity and lack because yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Or you don't have the capability energetically to accept it.
right,
You say it, but at the same time, you're terrified that it might come true.
right. I
Right?
also, I work with my clients a lot on words are spells, right? Like when we
Yes.
say, I need to, I have to, right? Like,
Mhm.
let's change that to I want to,
Yeah.
because there's so much more power in that,
Yeah. Or I
right?
have, or I do.
Have, right. I already have, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole reticular activating system,
Yeah,
though, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah. So I always love to ask this question. So, what is something that you live by that you want to share with our listeners?
uh, probably, and this will probably make people go, but put yourself first.
Yeah, I
You
love
know,
that.
as much as you love your family, if you don't put yourself first, you don't have anything to give them.
Mm. I always, use the analogy of, you got to put the oxygen mask on you first before you put it on someone else. And I was
Yeah.
talking to a potential client once, and she was like, "That pisses me off when people say that." And I was like, "Ooh, we're not there yet." I was like, "But here's the thing: if you're dead, you can't actually take care of your kids."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you have to take care of you first. I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So Kelly, tell the listeners where they can find. We'll put everything in the show notes, but I know you have an offer for them. You want to just tell them a little bit what that offer is?
Sure. Yeah. So I have an offer on my website, which is Radiant Femme, and it's FEMME .ca, because
Okay.
I'm Canadian, so we
Yeah.
got to
And
do .ca.
it'll be in the show notes so people
Yeah.
can find it. Yeah.
Okay. And if they just enter their information, they will receive a booklet that gives them 5 strategies to reduce the hustle and anchor more into the feminine, as well as a about 13-minute long hypnosis, which was designed specifically for women in corporate culture and business owners.
Love that. Thank you.
Yeah,
So at the end of a beginning of each podcast, I pull 3 cards. And today I pulled from the Wealthy Women deck. It was the
love
closest I
that.
had to women. So I chose that. So I have 3 cards in front of me. I'm going to have you choose, and then I'm going to have the listeners, and just maybe just ground into what message are you open to receiving right now. So I
Yeah,
have a left, a center, and a right.
left.
Left. Perfect. Ah, I love this. The healer. Beautiful. That is
Perfect.
beautiful. And then for those who chose center, radiant abundance. And then for
Beautiful.
those who chose right, mend the flow. I love that. I love
Yeah,
how these conversations, these cards are always in relation to the conversation. And I don't look at them in advance. I just pulled them.
yeah,
Because flow is all about the feminine, right?
absolutely.
I love
Yeah,
that. I love that. Kelly, thank you so much for being here today. It was so fun to have this conversation. For those of you listening, thank you for being here today and joining me on this journey. And remember, transformation begins within. Take a moment each day to connect with your higher self and trust that the universe is guiding you towards your highest good. If you found today's episode valuable, please subscribe, leave a review, share this podcast with anyone else who might benefit from this message. Your support really helps us reach more souls on their spiritual journey. Stay connected in our community, both Kelly and mine. All of our social media and website will be in the show notes. And until next time, continue to shine your light and walk in peace and love. I am Francine Tirrell, and this has been Effin' Fridays with Francine. Kelly, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.